Good evening, Sestras and all other viewers. Welcome to the SestraHood Alliance's first event. Thank you for joining us for this panel discussion on the subject of Mom, why does your love feel this way? For those of you who do not know, SestraHood Alliance is an organization that is put together to connect all women's organizations, leaders, and sisterhoods for the purpose of empowering womankind in general, mentally, physically, and financially. SestraNow is hosting this event tonight and is the leader in this initiative because SestraNow has its own app, the first app that is for all things women. It's a social media app that also houses a section for the marketplace business for the business products and services of all women. So SestraNow is an international women's empowerment organization, 35 countries and all throughout the United States. So the SestraHood Alliance is put together. Tonight we have many different women's organizations and women's leaders participating in the SestraHood Alliance first event. In this powerful discussion that we're about to have, it's going to be a passionate discussion. And so without further ado, I want to announce and introduce the two co-hosts for this evening. So I am Stephanie Montgomery, the founder and CEO for SestraNow and for the SestraHood Alliance. And so I want to introduce our co-hosts for this powerful event tonight. Lena Chapman and Kenyanda Reddy will be your host this evening. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to them, and then they will begin this powerful panel discussion. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. So before we get started on this amazing, wonderful topic, Mom, why does your love feel this way? I did want to go ahead and talk a little bit about a trigger warning. So trigger warnings, we kind of know what they are, but it's basically a warning to let you know that we will be talking about some things that are very deep and very personal. And so sometimes when we talk about deep things and things that are personal to us, it can open up some wounds. So if you feel like you need some extra support or you feel like it's too much and you may need to log off or turn off your camera, we ask that you do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself and to also reach out to a professional counselor that can possibly help you maneuver through those feelings. We also would like to remind you that we are recording. So if and when I mean recording, this will be on YouTube and other social media sites. So I did want to let you know that this is what's going to happen. So just be aware of what we're talking about because it will not be, I don't think it'll be edited. So if whatever you're sharing will be shared with the world. Okay. So just a couple little, just little housekeeping here.
All right, thank you, Miss Lena, for giving us that trigger warning and letting everybody know that this is a safe space. My name is Kenyanda Reddy. I will be co-hosting and moderating this evening. Thank you guys for tapping in for this Sisterhood event because we will be talking about something that's very dear to a lot of women in our communities in regards to the mother-daughter relationships. Once again, I'm Kenyanda Reddy. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of information in regards to my relationship with my mother. And then once I'm done, I will be letting every other panelist and our other moderator give a little information about their relationships with their mothers. So as for me, first and foremost, I would like to say I love my mother dearly. I think my mother is an awesome person. She has very great attributes. She shines like a diamond. However, I was born in 78, and in the 80s, my mother was a part of a specific time frame that affected a lot of our communities with drugs and whatnot. And I'm not too sure what the initial backstory is on her end on why she chose to make certain decisions. However, because of the decisions that she chose, our relationship wasn't as the authorian and the child who would be raised by the authority figure, it was basically like a friendship, which basically drew a line in our relationship. I was raised primarily by my grandparents because my mother was involved in, drugs and street life activities and things of that nature. So to protect me and my brother at the time, my grandparents took over the parenting aspect. And when I was growing up, I really didn't think too much about it. I think I had a really, really cool childhood up until about the age of 13, where, I went into my puberty and adolescent age to where things start opening up and I start seeing things differently. And then, of course, listen to some of the negative commentary from family members and different people around me, like, hey, your mom, your dad, X, Y, and Z, kind of had me open my eyes to look at my mom in a different aspect to say, like, hey, wait a minute, you're cool and all, but, you're my mom. And from there, I started questioning a lot of her movement. With that being said, I was moved back with my mom around 12 or 13. And when I moved back with her, um, the relationship became strained because at that point I became like the mother because I had other siblings and she was like kind of doing what she was doing. Then I turned up being a teen mother. And it just was a lot of aspects that did not click to make our relationship become more and more distant and more strenuous because now we're bumping heads because like I'm running the mom, running her household like I'm the mom, and she's like, no, I'm the mom and you're the daughter. And I'm like, wait a minute, but if you're the mom, things supposed to be happening a certain kind of way. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. As of today, I have officially went no contact, excuse me, because at this point, due to therapy and wanting to raise my family a certain kind of way, I don't feel my mom has matured enough to accept her responsibility and that she has had with her children and in our family. And I wanted to raise my children a certain kind of way to break some of the cycles. But as of today, I'm more than willing and always will be willing to listen to my mom and to men the relationships with my mom. If my mom decides to go to therapy and listen to somebody other than me, because if I'm giving my opinion, I'm the daughter in her eyes, not the adult. And to me, mom, I'm the adult and your daughter, and we both need some healing. So, with that being said, I'm going to pass it on to our other moderator, Miss Lena Chapman, to give us her information. Go ahead, Miss Lena.
Hello, Hello, everyone. My name is Lena Chapman. I am a licensed professional counselor in the state of Missouri. I am from St. Louis, so yay, St. Louis. So a little bit about me. I own my own private practice called Haven of Light Christian Counseling. And so we're really going to go into like my relationship with my mom. So I'm blessed to have two moms. And what I mean by that, I was raised by my stepmother, which I call my mom, my stepmother and my dad. I am the youngest out of 9 children from my biological mother. And we did not grow up with my mother. And so my relationship with my mom at first was just non-existent. I wouldn't say it was negative or positive because we didn't have a relationship at all. And so as I grew up and, different things, I think that in my early 20s, when I didn't understand relationships and people and just all those different components that kind of influences relationships. I had a negative relationship with her. I was always angry and blaming her, and continued the cycle in my mind that she abandoned me. She abandoned me, right? It wasn't until I decided to really dive into healing to accept my mother for where she was and who she was, and really understand where she's come from. And once I got that dynamic of generational curses, generational things that were going on in my family, then I kind of understood my mother. So right now, I wouldn't say we have the like positive relationship, but it's no like stress because I know where my mother is and I expect her to be my mother from her capacity. So that's just a little bit about me and my relationship with my mother. So now we will start with our panel. And I do believe we are going to start with Miss Angela, correct? Is that correct, Miss
Yes,
Angela?
hi. Yes.
Hi, Miss
Yeah,
Angela. How are
how
you?
I'm okay.
All right, well,
Um,
back to you.
Good to see you as well. I don't really know how to describe my mother, my relationship with my mother. It's like non-existing but existing. I left my mother's house when I was like 13 because of things that were happening in my home and certain things that she said to me. I'm cordial with my mother. I call her maybe for her birthday, and my children really don't know her. Um, she I think like you mentioned about counseling, I think someone needs to get to the root of her problem on why she dealt with me a certain way or all her children a certain way. But I'm speaking on just for me because I don't deal with her in any aspect, like visiting her. People don't know. People literally don't know I have a mother like in church. They'd be like, "Oh, your mother's alive." That kind of relationship. Certain things that happened to me as a youth. Um, I thought I forgave her, but maybe I haven't fully because I don't allow my children to go around her or wouldn't trust them around her or trust her around them either way, because I don't feel like she was a protector like she should have been, like a mother supposed to be. But then we know some mothers don't have that maternal instinct like they supposed to have. So basically, I don't know if I've forgiven my mother at all, just by how I react to her sometimes. And someone actually said to me, what the other moderator said was that maybe the healing process to find out why what happened to her may be a direct result of what happened to me and how she responds to me. But me as a mother feel like if you see certain things that you're doing to your children and is not coming across the right way, that you should try to be different, if that makes sense to you. So I don't have a relationship with my mother. Someone said I should just try to talk to her, but because of my history with her, I don't trust anything she says. So that is the history of me and my mother. Mother's Day, I barely call her. Make Christmas, Thanksgiving, her birthday. And then once in a while when I'm on this road, I may call and just say, I'm just checking in. And that's the extent of my kids don't know her. They ain't not interested in knowing her. And yeah, so that's the extent of my relationship with my mother. And I don't know if I will ever fully, I'm not looking for a relationship with her. Let's put it that way. I'll just keep it cordial the way I have it.
All right, all right, all right, Miss Angela. Thank you for your information in regards to your mom. We truly appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and move on to our next panelist, Miss Stephanie Montgomery. Let's start with you, Miss Stephanie. Give us some information about your relationship with you and your mother.
I just have a question. Are we going to go into the reason why we have that relationship with our mother right now, or we do that later?
We do that later.
Okay, great. So right now, which I have great news, is up until 2 days ago, I was no contact with my mother, but I'm a woman of faith. I'm a Christian and a woman of faith, and God has been dealing with me and my brother. I am the oldest of three siblings. My parents have been married about as old as I am, about 55 years. They come from the same small town in South Carolina. Um, Unlike many women that may say they have a toxic relationship with their mother, I grew up in what some would say looks like a Cosby-like household when you look at it from the outside, because it was always my younger brother and my younger sister and we were raised as Jehovah's Witnesses, and we were very sheltered. I did not have any abuse experience or anything like that, but it was just only when I got. So right now I've reestablished contact with my mother because I want to work on me. I want to not delay my progress in life because I understand that it's not completely her fault. And I learned recently that she has dementia, symptoms and different things. And also, I just want to forgive and move on with my life. So I've just recently established contact with her. It was at the point where I didn't want to go any place near her. I didn't even want her to be in the same house. that we were in. That's how bad it was. Just until 2 days ago, I was convicted to reestablish the contact with her. And just my goal is to love her and to talk to her and to never stop talking to her again. But later I can get into more of that. But I have reconnected with her. It's been an on and off type of situation for some time. And this last time was like months without talking to her. Maybe since last summer I stopped my communication with her, and recently we reconnected, and I'm back again. So thank you for your time, but so you can proceed.
Thank you, Miss Stephanie. Thank you so much. That's awesome. You were able to reconnect with your mom right before this panel took place. That's awesome. All right. Do we have Miss Tanya Johnson available? Miss Tanya, are you available? Let's get to some positives here.
I'm sorry, Tanya was not able to make it because she had a family emergency, so we'll have to move on from her.
Okay. All right. Miss Princess Moore. Miss Princess Moore, are you available?
I can go next if that's okay.
Hi, Annette. Go ahead, Miss Annette. Go ahead.
Hello, ladies. I'm Annette. I am a co-founder of SestraNow, and now I am a former executive member, former COO of SestraNow. I'm so happy to be here with you, and here I am repping SestraNow with my T-shirt. And so, thank you for having me a part of this. It's so interesting. The second speaker or the moderator said that she has two moms. It's the same thing with me. So she started that. And so my mother, my biological mother had me when she was very young, and she lived with her sister and my grandmother. And so my two moms is my biological mom and her sister, who's also my mom. So they're both mommy. So I was raised, because my mother was young and they felt that it was best, I was raised with my mom, my grandmother, and my aunt, who's also my mom. And so it's an interesting dynamic because I had I grew up comparing the two of them. And the household that I grew in was a very religious and, kind of very structured household. And then my mother, she was more free spirit. And so in many ways, I always saw my biological mother as more of my sister than my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I just want to say that, I've had issues with both. And then, for good and good and bad with both for different reasons. But I also had my grandmother. So my grandmother was like really my primary caregiver. So I had three moms, if you would. But I'll just say that me being a mother myself has made all the difference. And just, but I often find myself having to be in a place where I'm trying to be understanding and be, and just checking myself to what I did, what did I did, how my influence, how my, and who am I like, and just my kids has been very challenging. I have 6 daughters, right? I have 6 daughters and I have a little son. And let me tell you, it's been a very humbling, a very humbling experience. And so I am today where I am is I'm just trying to be loving and accepting, also being able to have those boundaries. And, also as a woman of faith, I strongly believe that we are to honor our parents. And so I find myself balancing between that honoring, but then I also think, well, you know what? The Bible also says, provoke not your children to wrath. So, but it's great. I'm blessed to have both of them. I have different relationships with both of them. And I am who I am today because of both of them. But I do honestly identify more with one. But I'm not going to get into all that. But thank you.
We're going to come back to that, okay? Because we want to know who you identify with. Thank you so much, so much. I just want to elaborate real quick on that. Thou should not provoke thy children. And I know a lot of us who are faith-based have went over that a lot in our head. But we'll get back to that because I want to, make sure we get all our panelists on here before we dig deep into this conversation, okay? Miss Princess Moore, are you available? I want to make sure we have covered all our panelists and no one is missing. If you are missing and I have not called out your name and you have not spoken, go ahead and say, I am ready. Again, Miss Princess, are you available to speak? Are
Yeah.
you on mute? There you go.
Hear
Hey,
me?
how you doing?
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Queen.
Great
Thank you.
evening, everyone. I am Princess Moore, founder and CEO of Bloodline Queens of God, Bloodline Royalty of God, as well as Bloodline Kings of God now. And let's talk about my relationship with my mom because right now we have a phenomenal relationship. However, it haven't always been that way. I mean, I had abandonment issues, I had trust issues, basically everything that most people will go through, that will cause that broken relationship. But what I will say is through having children, um, my relationship with God and therapy, I was able to understand my mother, and that relationship with God reconnected us and at the perfect time. And now we have built on that, and our relationship has been phenomenal since then. So that's all I'm going to say for now. Y'all find out a little bit more a little bit later, but that's what I got for you for now. Mwah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So going on down the list, Miss Liliana. Miss Liliana, are you available to speak?
I am. Good evening. How's everybody today?
Hi. Thank you so much. Go
Okay.
ahead, Miss Liliana.
Yes, mine is a little bit complex because I actually live with her. So, yeah, it's tough. But like Stephanie had said in hers, there was never any abuse, nothing, of physical, sexual, but a lot of emotional, a lot of critical criticism, never meeting the standards. And it's still like that. So it's really challenging. I was thinking, that what Annette was saying too about, honor thy mother and father. It's something that came to me today in prayer. And so after praying today before this and seeing that scripture again, which I've heard, of course, a million times, I'm going to try harder to have that self-control, which is also a fruit of the spirit, because I do tend to respond back and it goes back and forth a lot and it's not healthy. So I'm working on it. You can see her in the background.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So let us know if you would like to continue or if you want me to move on. You could.
I mean, that's really it's okay to continue. I just really didn't have much more to say because I'm working on it, growing up, my parents my father just passed away, but they're immigrants from Italy and they built a really successful business. And so they had high expectations. It was like a keeping up with the Joneses. And I was like a teenager or a child even who beat to my own drum, right? And I was a little bit more giving to people, a little bit more of a humanitarian. And I didn't want to be a doctor or be a lawyer. I wanted to go save the world. And it was a lot of clashes because of that, because they had just higher expectations of who I am as a person. And that's
Awesome.
both of them.
So we're having really good timing. So I want to see if Raquel is available, and then if you guys don't mind, I want to see if any one of the panelists would like to, get a little bit deeper before we start asking the questions. And if not, then we can go ahead into the questions. Raquel, are you available? Are you here, sweetie?
Hello, good evening, sisters, good evening. I was having some trouble with my voice. It's because that old devil don't want me to speak, but I'm here and I'm gonna speak about this. this is a little bit triggering. So, all right. So as of right now, the relationship with my mom, I don't have one. Growing up, I grew up in a Christian home. My grandfather was a reverend. That in the 90s, the middle class family. My mother, she was 16 when she had me. And the story was that my birth father raped her. And so that's how I came about. Growing up,
That's the author, because she was the girl.
growing up,
Hold on, hold on for a moment. If you're not on mute, please, can you please mute your phone to give Miss Raquel the respect of talking about her mom, please? Thank you. Go ahead, Miss Raquel.
growing up, like I said, my mom was 16 when she had me, and the story was, what she told me was, my biological father raped her. I don't know who my father is, never met him. But like I said, she was 16 when she had me, and I remember growing up, she used to say to me that she wished she never she wished she never had me. And she went, back then Job Corps was somewhere you sent your children, if they was giving you problems or whatever. She used to threaten to send me away to Job Corps. I remember being 15 years old, and I was late with my period. And she put me on birth control because she thought I was pregnant. I wasn't. But over the years, me and my mother's, we've never had one. I still to this day don't talk to my mother. I remember when I lost my apartment, a few years back, she was the first person that I called. And she told me that she couldn't help me. Although I understand she was young when she had me. I understand that. But ever since my grandmother passed away 2 years ago, which she raised me, I thank God that my grandparents stepped in and raised me in church. I just continue to pray for her, because God is working on me and healing me as to He's healing and working on her. And I just pray that one day I can, me and my mother commend that relationship. I don't want her to pass away, God forbid. But I just keep my mom in my prayers. And so that's where I'm at with my relationship with my mom. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Miss Raquel. Big hugs, sister. Big hugs.
Big hugs from all of your Sestra.
Yes,
Raquel, I'm sorry I have to
big
interrupt. Just you're receiving a big Sestra hug right now. We
Love
got
you,
you,
Raquel.
Raquel. You know that.
We love you.
And just a little bit more too, when she said she wished she never had me, that really had me growing up like, who was I? Who am I? So I got into a lot of different things to fit in the crowd, to try to find out who was I. But thank you for letting me share. I love you, Sestras. That was a breakthrough right there for me.
Again, big hugs, Miss Raquel. unfortunately, if you've had a negative experience with your mom, no matter how small or how big, a lot of us can relate to that feeling. So I feel you, Miss Raquel. And I'm glad you're here and I'm glad you're speaking about it. And you're not alone, baby. And we just want to lift you up. And I will keep you in my prayers. And
Please do, y'all. Thank you.
yeah,
And this is a, see, God set me up good. I've been through what I've been through, but look now, a part of a dynamic, phenomenal, world-changing women's organization, man. That's the positive side
ain't he
of
good?
this.
Ain't he good? Ain't he good?
So
So
that's the
now let's
positive.
continue talking about this. Let's get into it. Y'all ready to get into it? Again, if you need some time for yourself, if you need to take your camera off, remember this is a safe space. We are here for you. We are accompanying. This is a no judgment zone, and we want to show respect by also keeping our mics on mute so it won't interrupt with the speaker who is speaking at that time. Miss Lena, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to you so we can get into the questioning, and let's get into it.
All right, let's get into these questions. And just, a little disclaimer, these questions are going to be for understanding and for healing purposes, not just for the panel, but for the people in this space, in this room. And so let's just get started. So I'm going to ask a question, and whoever would like to chime in definitely can. There is a reaction button. So if you want to raise your hand in the reaction button to say like I'm next, that is perfectly fine. Everyone doesn't have to necessarily answer the question that's asked. But if you feel like it pertains to you and you feel like you have some helpful information, you definitely can do that. Okay. So our first question, and this is not toward anyone, but just whoever would like to answer. How has your relationship with your mother contributed to your relationships you have with your children and or other relationships? So I'm going to read it one more time.
So,
How has your relationship with your mother contributed to your relationships with your children and or other relationships?
Okay,
okay, I can't. Oh, I'm
no, go
sorry.
ahead.
I can't push a button, so I just have to push one button. I can't do the other thing because I'm driving.
Jump on in,
So,
jump on in.
okay. So my relationship with my mother, or how I grew up, has made me the total opposite. That I think, as Annette used the scripture, spoil was it spoil out your children, right? Whatever, you know what I'm talking about, what you just mentioned. Hold on. And I think I've overcompensated with my daughter, that she and I have problems at this point. And I don't know the root of the problem, but I know personally I've done everything opposite by showing them love, giving them what they want, making sure they're good, just taking care of my kids like a mother's supposed to take care of them. I'm not going to speak on my boys. I'm just speaking on my daughter. And it's like, so what else can I do? Like, and she literally hates me. And it's like, what more can I do? Because if I do you like my mother did me, or behave the way my mother behaved towards her children, you're not going to like me for real. But then I'm like, maybe that's what I needed to do, because I don't know what to do at this point when I did everything that I could possibly do, because you don't have a rule book on how to raise children. So it's like, I just tried to make sure I was nothing like my mother concerning my children. So I think I've overcompensated to the point where it's still a problem. And it's like, where is the balance on how to deal with children? Because there's no rule book, and there's no real, like, um, there's no rule book. And so you got to play it by ear and do the best you can. And even your best, you think you're doing the best, but then it's like, why? You just have to ask, why are you like this? Why are we like this? And I don't have a I would like to know what I could do about that. Or is there a solution to that? Because it's mind boggling that I've like they talk about generational curses. I came out of that, and it's like my daughter, she acts like she wants to be in it. Like she would prefer that as opposed to a mother that actually cares about her. So I don't
I
know if
think
that really answered your question,
it
but I want to
did.
put
Yeah,
myself on
it did.
mute. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
You did a really good job. And I think that's where a lot of people, I saw a lot of head nods were like,
Mm-hmm.
where is that balance? Where's the
Yes.
balance between I want to do different by my kids, or that balance between, okay, there were some good things that my mother may have done, and there were some bad things my mom may have done. How do I find that great balance where I am not overcompensating or undercompensating? So I absolutely like what you said. And I think a lot of people can relate who are mothers right now are just like, yeah, I don't know where that balance is sometimes because I feel like I may be parenting my younger child versus parenting my child.
Right. There you go.
Oh,
Speak
now that's
on it.
deep.
Yes.
That's deep, right?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna give you a therapy session, but I may be parenting my younger child versus parenting my
Mm-hmm.
child, which is very different. And Angela, I'm gonna get to you. I mean, not Angela. I'm gonna get to you just a second. I see you, Bloodline Queen. But a lot of times we are providing our children with things that we feel like we needed as a child versus really looking at what do they actually need because they are not us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead, Bloodline Queen. You're next.
I mean, Lena, let's chat about that for a minute because um that's my issue. My relationship, it caused me to do too much. My princesses, they're spoiled rotten, and it basically came from me wanting to make sure that they knew mommy's here. Mommy have you. Mommy's not going nowhere. My daughter, both of my daughters, they have their own business. And the reason being is, yes, to set them up for the future, but at the same time, if something happened to mommy, you guys are set. They have more money in their banking account than I do. Because if something happens to mommy, you guys are set, So it it caused me to pour too much into them. And it was what you said. I was parenting the little girl and me, giving them what I didn't get instead of looking at what was best for them. It later came into therapy, like I mentioned before. Therapy helped me understand my mother, which also helped me understand me as a mother and what my child needs. My relationship with God. It helped me understand my mother, understand my place as a mother, and understand my child and what I need to do to raise my child according to God and not me. Which means according to God and not me, what I've been. So it actually helped me, like they say, parent motherhood don't come with a manual, a handbook, or anything. But that's my guidance, to now breaking, not breaking, because I don't like to call it breaking, but fixing what I did as far as spoiling my children rotten.
Absolutely. And I think you said something key here about like overcompensating. So I want to make sure that they have this. I want to make sure they have what I didn't have. I want to make sure I have. And oftentimes, if you really, and especially if you have multiple children, if you really watch their personalities, one may be like, I don't really need all the hugs and kisses, but I need this. And another kid may be, I need to be up under you, but I don't need this. And so if we start to parent, if you really look at it, if we really start to parent our children from our broken inner child, the inner child that's still healing, we will miss the mark every time, right? And I keep hearing, I hear a lot of people also saying, like, with that space of healing, is basically as you are healing and you're growing and things like that, it's really to say, you know, I'm not going to be the perfect parent, but what I do tell my kids are, when you're ready to go sit on that couch with me, even though I'm, you know, I'm a therapist, whenever you're willing to sit on a couch with me to heal for whatever I did that I thought I was doing the right thing, I'm ready. I may not
Yes.
raise unbroken children, but I will do my best to say, whatever I did break, let's go fix it. Let's go talk about it. So I wanted to go to Annette. Annette, I know you have something to chime in.
So it's interesting because as we're talking about this, I'm thinking about both moms, right? I'm thinking about, you know, how would I answer this in both ways? And I think that because I came from that point of comparison, my kids do it too. And I remember my late husband, my husband passed away when I was pregnant with my twins, they were number 5 and 6. And like I said, my biological mom, and I just want to be clear, she was always in my life. She was my mom. It's not like, it wasn't like she was absentee. It was just I lived with my grandmother and my, you know, my mom. So my mother was, it wasn't a case where I felt abandoned or anything. She was very much in my life. But I had this dualism going, and so I saw of her more like a sister. And I remember my late husband used to say, Annette, watch how you talking to your mom, because you have daughters and they're watching you. And I'm like, well, because she doesn't understand. And, you know, he's like, but they're children. They don't know the backstory. They don't know all of that. And so a lot of that has really backfired for me. And so my kids, they scrutinize me. They scrutinize me and they measure me with like, well, this is how you are with your mom, you know? And as much as I try to be better than both, you know, to do better than both moms, it's very funny that my kids tell me, you sound just like your birth mom. Like, as far as I think I'm so different, and even at some levels better, they check me on that. So it's just so interesting. And you know, she's my mom. And so that also helps me to appreciate the good that I got from both sides, right? So you know, it's interesting. I didn't live with my mom at all, my birth mother, but definitely part of who I, you know, she's okay. And I'll just confess, you know, my mom, my mother, my other one is who I really identify with, who I thought it was like more like her. But it's so interesting that my kids, when they say, oh, you look just like, you said, just like that, you know, this grandma. So I'm like, wow. So that's just interesting.
Very good. I absolutely love your input. As you were talking, I was thinking about, so we talked about relationships with our kids, but how has your relationship with your mother affected your relationship with your partner or your spouse? Do you find that relationship where you either experience rejection, abandonment, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, things like that, bleeding out into your relationships with your partners or your spouses or your friends, things like that? Anybody have anything for that one before we move on to the next question?
So yeah, like, you know, the lack of the relationship with my mom, you know, I have, like I said, my grandmother raised me, so I have I'm more like my grandmother more than my mother, but I have those little, like, you know, negative characteristics like my mom. And it definitely, you know, the relationship I'm in now with my honey, it'll be 4 years in May that we've been together. And in the beginning of the relationship, I mean, the nasty attitude, the vulgar mouth, just, you know, all of that, it really spilled over into our relationship in the beginning and for a while. But I thank God that God sent him in my life because he's truly patient, loving, caring, understanding. And so, but yeah, the lack of the relationship with my mom definitely spilled over. But I'm getting better with God's help. I'm getting better, and so I'm getting back to who I was before all the trauma, all of the pain, and all of that. So yeah, that's my input.
I love that, Raquel. It's almost like you were saying, I'm getting back to my eternal self which is the person who God created me to be from the beginning. I
Right.
absolutely love that.
Yeah.
So is it Lillian? Lily? You put something in the chat that just like rang a bell, and you said that it made me become a people pleaser, right? Anybody have
It
that?
did. It
Yeah.
definitely did. And it's not in a good way because it's like almost like being used by everybody because I don't want to make anybody get angry or get upset or say something negative that's gonna hurt me. So I try to make the world happy, and that's a big burden.
That is so good that you said that. There are a lot of people who suffer from people pleasing, or like I like to say, recovering people pleasers. Because once you start to notice it, you're starting to do more about it because of the rejection and abandonment or the emotional verbal abuse. A lot of people become that people pleasing where I'm trying to get this person, I'm trying to get that person because I did not get that love and support from my mother or my parents. Go ahead, Stephanie. I saw your hand raised.
Yes, I'll make this quick because I think I have something that's on point with my situation. I'm going to lower my hand. I am just finishing I am divorced for the third time, right? So we can maybe the questions to come, I can get more into it. But I believe because of the relationship with my mom, being very specific, when my grandmother passed away many years ago, pancreatic cancer. But when my grandmother was alive, my grandmother and my mom had this ongoing feud, like kind of like what my mom and I have now, right? And I always said to my mom, you know, and my father as well, and my family, like, why can't you guys just get along? So what happened was because they had this constant fight, and I was very, very close to my grandmother, right? And my mother had an issue with the fact that I was so close to her mom, right? So just to give that foundation, like my mom didn't like that I was my grandmother's baby. My grandmother always protected me. And my grandmother always entrusted me with business and financial things that she didn't trust her own daughter with. So it was always this anger, like because I was the eldest, my grandmother had that relationship with me. So imagine me having the passbook bank account for my mother, for my grandmother, and not her daughter, her only daughter. She was her only daughter. So how this affected the relationship with me and I had 3 husbands, right? But the last husband, my grandmother never got a chance to meet him because as soon as I got with him, she passed away, unfortunately, within 2 to 3 months. But I can use that for an example. All my life, all I've ever wanted was to just be married and have a family and have children of my own. And I don't have children of my own. And again, I'm just ending my 3rd marriage. But I don't even want to start crying. But since I
Take your
was like,
time.
because I grew up in a very, very strict religious household, I just always wanted to please my parents, right? I just always wanted to have what they had, that perfect Bill Cosby like household. And so that's why I was married so many times, because I wanted to hurry up and get married and just have the approval of my mother and my father. So what happened was with my mother and specifically, because she had this thing with my grandmother, whenever my grandmother's elderly, right? So whenever my grandmother needed to stay somewhere, she would always say, when I was single, it's like her, her and my grandmother would fight, right? So then my mother would call me, you got to come and get your grandmother. So I would never have the opportunity to just date and have a boyfriend or do anything in my own house because my grandmother would be right there in my living room, right? So I would always have this fight with my mother, like you and my dad are there. You have this extra bedroom. Why can't you just get along with your mother so I can try to date and have a life with men and get to the point that you're already at? You have 3 kids. You already have your husband. Why is it that you won't let me have that? Why don't you just let me be single and date and do my thing? So I kept hurrying to get married so that I can have a situation where she can't just come and tell my grandmother to come and stay with me. I don't know if that makes sense. So And every time the relationship would end, one of the marriages is like, oh, I'm single again. My mother be like, well, you're single, and she could just come and stay with you. So it was just constant feud. Imagine for like the last 25, 30 years, back and forth with my mother, with her, until my grandmother passed away. And I'll share maybe later about how that went, up until the very end. As soon when my grandmother was dying of pancreatic cancer and we didn't know it, I just met somebody who was my third husband. I just wanted to date him. But my grandmother was sick. So I missed going to see my grandmother, who I loved so much, on her deathbed, because I was busy fighting with my mother over who should take care of my grandmother. So she went down south to take care of my grandmother. And I was like, you're going to do this. I'm going to make you take care of your mother. I am not going to run down there. And unfortunately, I missed being next to my grandmother, who I love so much, because of this fight with my mother. When I got down there, it was too late. She was gone. And this is like a whole story to that, but I had to sing to her on her deathbed a song. And my mother said, she was in a hospice, and my mother said she smiled when I sang that song, but she probably was just looking for my face, and she didn't see it because I was too busy fighting with my mother, and she didn't get to see my face before she died. So I just want to share how it impacts us.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that was not an easy thing to talk about, especially when there's grief mixed up with relationships with parents and things like that. That is such a complicated thing. And thank you so much for sharing. Just let us know if you need some support. We definitely love you. And I know that's not an easy thing. It doesn't sound like that's an easy thing to talk about. But thank you so much for sharing that. And I think this is what this is about. This is what this is about. I know that these are tough conversations, but oftentimes healing can come through conversation. Healing definitely can come through conversation, even if you never really have a big solution to it. But that healing space of, oh, I am not alone. I felt the same way. Oh, that sounds like my story. That sounds a little bit about this. I don't feel like I'm all alone. Okay, I thought I was the only mother, the only daughter that ever went through this. I thought I was, and other people like, nah, girl, I went through that too. So healing definitely can come through conversation. And I do definitely appreciate you sharing that with us. So the next question that we're going to go to is, do you feel that your relationship with your mother is a generational curse that has been passed down? And then it's some sub questions like, how so, like your grandmother relationships and family history. And so I'm going to kind of start off this piece because I kind of mentioned it in my introduction with my mother. And so as I began to, right before I got married, I was able to talk to my aunt, which is my mom's sister. And she gave me this whole history lesson of my family. And as she went down the line of grandmothers and great grandmothers and things like that, the same thing kept reoccurring. Someone gets married, they have children, they don't want the children end up living with other people, lots of favoritism, things of that nature, abandonment of the children, just a complete, like, there were so many cycles. And when I finally heard that story, that was my aha moment. To know that my mother was actually in an orphanage. And I was like, wait, what? She was like, and that's when they call them orphanages, like for real, not like foster care. They actually call them orphanage. And I was like, what? She said, yeah. And they went through a lot of abuse because back then I think a lot of the nuns would be the ones who were over the orphanages. So they would get lots of whipping. And then think about it. Also, my mother's in her 70s. So you're also talking about not only that type of abuse, but being a woman of color in spaces like that too. So lots of abuse, things like that. And so that right there, learning the history of what my mom went through, and then not only that, learning what my great grandmother went through. I was like, oh, there's just histories of women who have done this over and over and over to their children. And I'm like, wow. And so that was my aha moment for me about capacity. You know exactly what to do. You knew that, okay, I need to have children, I need to get married, and multiple marriages and things like that. But you didn't know how to be a mom because who was a mom to you? So that was my aha moment for me. But I definitely want to pass the mic to anyone who wants to jump in on that conversation.
I have something to say. Thank you so much, ladies. I don't know if there are any men on here for this forum. This is so deep. I didn't know what to expect. My mother gave me the Zoom information, and I said, let me hop on. But I appreciate you ladies for sharing. I really, really do. I am a social worker, not practicing anymore. But my mom, I was raised in a Christian household. And yeah, my mom and dad were married, I'm going to say a good 7 years. Papa was a Rolling Stone. My mother taught me, like God said, that a woman is supposed to be married one time. So she really never had any like male relationships out of my dad. So I didn't really see growing up a relationship, like how a relationship was even supposed to be. I just saw my mother just struggling by herself all the time. She did it all for me and my brother. But with that being said, the love and marriage, that was like the generational curse. The finances never taught us like how to save or invest. I spent money in my 20s and 30s like I was rich. Nobody ever taught me any financial education. And I have a whole master's in social work. That was a generational curse, beating the living daylights out of me because, her and my dad separated. Not in a way like yeah, yeah, today and age, she would be under the jail. She, beat us horribly when I think about it. I was like, I will never hit my daughter with a belt. She will never get hit with a belt. So I broke some of those generational wealths, or generational curses. Um, by just teaching my daughter about certain things that my mother, taught me. But like Angela said, I just learned to be different. My mother was very loving. There wasn't abuse. Maybe a lot of yelling and screaming. You're just like your father. Like all of that, affects a child. She had love in her heart, but she just screamed a lot and everything. It was, you're just like your father. So always put him down, so I never saw a husband and like what a relationship with a, melanated couple is really supposed to look like. So I appreciate this forum right here, though. This is amazing. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I think that that is one of the biggest things, especially in our African American communities, is that we think about abuse as just physical or sexual. But what about that emotional abuse? And that emotional abuse definitely passes down just as much as that physical and sexual stuff, too, and that verbal abuse. Those things are also considered abuse. So saying things like, you're just like your father, or you're no good, or you think you out there being fast and things like that, that definitely can cause an emotional toll on people. Yes. Who else would like to answer this question about generational curses and kind of just knowing if you do know your story about your mom or your grandmother and how that relationship was versus the relationship you had with your mom or your great grandparents or things like that?
I want to jump in really quick
And
Absolutely.
I would like
in
to
regards to.
I would like to jump in after her because I did have my hand raised, but no one recognized it.
Oh, I'm
Go
so
ahead, Mr. Jones.
sorry.
Go ahead, Ms. Jones. You got it, sweetie. I can let you go first. Go ahead, baby.
No, go on. I'll go after you. No problem.
Okay, thank you. So as far as generational curses, one thing I did notice when I sat back to assess my family, for one, everybody was a teen parent. That was a thing that I noticed. So when you're younger, because I was raised by my grandparents, you don't realize how young or old your grandparents is at that time because they're grandparents, right? And you kind of put them already in the age of being an elder. So my grandmother died when she was 65. And at that time I was 21 and didn't realize 65 was actually really, really young to be passing away. And then as I kind of went back in the history of thinking about all the things that were going on, how young she was at the time. So if I was 21, 21 years ago, right, that would put my grandmother like in her early 40s to be having 8 kids, grandchildren, a husband, own a home, taking care of her drug addict kids, children, and then everybody else's children, because not only did she have her children, she had some of her siblings' children as well. And I'm like, gosh, I'm 45 right now. So at 41, my grandmother had everything going as if she was already like 65. Okay. Then they don't tell you what's going on, right? They didn't tell us that the first 3 children that my grandmother had weren't even my grandfather's. So some things are kind of swept up under the rug. And then I'm thinking, well, if she had already had kids and then she's 41, and at the time I was born, her first 3 were already adults, that means my grandmother was a teen parent, right? And that's possibly why my mom was a teen parent, right? And then I became a teen parent, which probably gave her that mental ability to say, you know what, I didn't get the help when I was a teen, so I'm going to help my child who was a teen, because they were very, very strong and aggressive about not letting my mom take care of us because she wasn't okay and she wasn't ready. And my mama was just kind of fast. She was on drugs, but before it really became a big issue, she was just fast and moving around. So they really snatched us and was like, you know what, you can go do you, but we're going to take these kids, right? So what I also noticed is that going back to what another a panelist was saying, where you have this relationship with your grandmother stronger than the relationship with your mom. So my relationship with my grandmother was stronger than my relationship with my mom, right? And my mom would be like, "You act just like my mama. You old and you got this granny type vibe. Your food nasty." And my mom wanted me to be more like her, right? And she was like trying to dress me up and put makeup on and be fast like her. But because I spent most of my time with my grandmother, I act like my grandmother, and she couldn't stand it. It was like she looked at me and she seen my grandmother and she would get so angry, right? And I'd be like, that's not okay, right? So going on with me having my children, I ended up having sons. My oldest son is 29, he'll be 30 in May, and my youngest is 18. He just turned 18, and then I have a daughter finally, right? And she's 3 years old. However, I wanted to make sure that my sons did not become teen parents. And they've crossed the threshold because they don't have kids and they don't look like they're going to be having kids anytime soon. However, because my mom at that point decided I was too much like my grandma for her, to where there was kind of like a dislike. I feel like she kind of disliked me a little bit. And then I probably wasn't cute enough or fast enough like she was a little bit. And she just didn't want to deal with that relationship between her and her mother. I don't know how that went. I have my mom's side, but my grandmother passed before I was knowledgeable enough to ask her these questions. What happened? What happened between you and my mom? Because my mom was your second oldest daughter, but she was your fourth child. And I have an auntie who is the baby out of all these children, and her relationship is good. So what happened between you and my mom? Because the oldest daughter is good, the youngest daughter is good, but that middle daughter, which is my mom, is not good. But that middle daughter is the one that got the help. That always, my grandmother beat her feet for my mom and my mom's children. So with me, I felt like, okay, grandma helped you. Why you didn't help me? She don't help me, right? And then I swear that when my kids have grandchildren, I'm for sure be 65 probably, right? Or 50, because I'm already 45. So I'm gonna be that grandma. And I'm gonna be the grandma for them that I have for me. So that's a part of me breaking that cycle, but the cycle kept going when I became a teen parent. So, I just want to elaborate on that, and I'm gonna pass it to Ms. Jones. Go ahead, Ms. Jones.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. I apologize for me coming in too late, but I'm glad that I came on time. And we are on an on-time God timing anyway. So and because this topic is it hits home for me in regards to generational curses. I was not a teenage parent. In fact, I didn't have my first child until 28, after I finished getting married, purchasing a house, and getting my degrees. And I knew I was stopping the generational curse with me, because my husband and myself came from teenage parents, So I was very, very adamant on having that changed, because change has to start with you. I can't blame our ancestors and blame our parents, because they was brought up by wolves. I always said that. They was not taught either. That's why they coming out in a space where they're coming out of. And it's up to us women, I'm in my 50s, us women that is in these spaces, that's blessed with Sestra, blessed with all of these different groups, that we know better. If we know better, we do better. And then that's how our children will do better. And I'm proud to say that my daughter, I have 3 girls. I'm not blessed with any boys. I have 3 girls, 25, 21, and 17. And this 17-year-old is going off to SUNY Brockport by August. We're going to SUNY Brockport. And I could tell you that I have successfully had 3 children, 3 girls, no pregnancies, no nothing. I have 2. I also want to share with the group that my husband is my prom date. It's 36 years this year. Okay. And my middle child, she's been with her boyfriend since 11th grade, like me, and she's 21. So they see what successful marriage is. They see what we do. They see it. And I give me a sec. Joe, call me. I'm on a Zoom. I can't talk to you right now. And so this is what I'm saying. When Miss Reddy said that she didn't see, I believe the young lady before Miss Reddy, that she didn't see how to be successful in a marriage. She didn't see that. This is it. When we have to be the example. And then that's in the Bible. Let us be our example of our family, right? And change that generational curse, because I believe it starts with us ladies that's in my age group, 40s, 30s, 50s. It starts with us. It's no one else's job but ours to make sure that we are going to have productive children coming after us. And we have to be the example. We have to speak properly in front of them. We have to show what class is. I'm seeing these babies coming to school with eyelashes. I think that's ridiculous. I think that is outrageous. I'm a natural woman. I don't do any of that extra stuff. I'm natural from head to toe. Michelle could tell you, I don't do the makeup. I don't do none of that, because with my, that's just me. I know that is not the culture, of society now, but I train my daughters into loving themselves naturally, right? So this is what it is. I promote that. And I stand really strong on that. But we really need to do better and need to embrace our naturalness and know that we are Black women that are gorgeous, that are proud, and we need to just put our crowns back on. And that's what I wanted to just tell you guys. And I love you.
Thank you so much for your input, Miss Jones. I think that was so huge. And while you were talking, Angela, I'm gonna let you go just a second. And while you were talking about like breaking generational cycles, generational curses, you really got to think about here is that the only way to do it is to heal. The only way to do it is to heal. You may have to heal with the conversation. You may have to heal without the conversation. You may have to heal, get the therapy. You may have to go to the altar and pray about it. You may have to, whatever those tough conversations may have to be. But that healing is what is going to break these cycles and basically stop creating different cycles. Just because we break a cycle doesn't mean we don't create another one, right? Okay. All right, Miss Angela, go ahead.
We go. So one thing I wanted to say in reference to the generational curses, i.e., speaking of my family, personally, someone mentioned in the chat so many secrets. It's like I know I broke a generational curse just by doing things differently, because in the old days, you would wonder why certain aunties, and I don't know if drugs were involved, but it's like you can't ask a question with your family and get an answer as to, well, why were you here and why was this person there? And everything is so secretive as to why they left down south. Why, when they came from down south, Yvonne was staying with her auntie and her mama was taking care of my grandmother kids, and it just goes to how do we, it's like you realize something is wrong in the family dynamics, but you don't know what it is that causes certain things to happen. And how do we get, it's a question really, but a rhetorical question, how do we get to the root of these generational curses to just get them to stop or stop them? Because it can stop with one person, and then some kids will grow up in the same household, but then everybody just turn out so differently, and how does the mindset, and how do we get people to understand that therapy is okay? Because I think I am where I'm at now is because of therapy, and I've done a lot of it. So, the generational curse is a funny thing. And I think I learned that with a college course, this guy that does those studies at City College, and it opened my eyes in reference to my kids and how my boys were, are treated, or how I treat them, and all of that, and trying to make them understand, their self-worth. So yeah, I don't even know what was my point, but the whole generational curse thing is a very strong thing that some people don't recognize, that it could be I'll say the meat of why some kids or some people are not successful or just messed up, and they don't know why. It's like we wrestle not against flesh and blood,
But
it's
the
spirits and
spirits,
people in high places. So getting to understand that, me as a Christian, understanding that, and it's like you got to pray those things out of your house, pray it out of your children, and keep touching your children just the same, and pray that they'll understand that they are fearfully, I'm using biblical stuff, and wonderful made, and they don't have to be like that, but the first thing I think is understanding that you as a person, or you deserve a lot more than what you may feel that is understanding our self-worth. Basically, that's what I want to say. Okay, I'm done. I'm gonna put you on mute again.
that's good. I absolutely love that. And what one word that just kept coming to my mind is history. If you want to break a curse, you need to know history, right? That's just like if we know if diabetes runs in our family, or high cholesterol, or high blood pressure, things like that, we tend to go, you know what? Let me start eating right because this kind of runs in my family. Let me start walking more. Let me start doing this and that. So learning our history, we may not ever get the history from our actual parents or our mom, but them aunties maybe want to talk, them cousins may want to talk. You know, even grandma, because maybe grandma's sick of holding them secrets. I don't know. You know, go talk to some of those uncles and aunts and things like that who may not necessarily be the person who hurt you, but maybe somebody who is, and you know, who may be next to them that may know some things, and you know, and you can go, okay, now I know what's in my bloodline, and like you said, now I can war in the spirit against it, and I can also do something in the natural about it. Absolutely. Go ahead, Annette.
Yeah, I was gonna say, can we get Annette to go? Because I want to double back on some things to make sure we're hitting some key aspects that's in the chat as well. Go ahead, Annette.
Yeah, it's so funny. I was hearing the woman that spoke about that I'm so glad that her kids have the opportunity to see a healthy relationship and so all of that. But I'm talking about generational curses. I don't know anybody that has worked harder than me to try to do better. I chose my husband that I chose was an amazing husband, amazing man, great father, great son, like just an angel. And guess what? He died when I was pregnant with our twins, our fifth and sixth children. And then what happens? And then here I'm a single mom, not because I didn't choose, I chose to be, not, I did all the right things. I raised my kids up, in church and also just teaching them, because church doesn't save you, but teaching them to have that relationship with God and being real with them and being honest. And, I don't know what I could have done differently. You know what I mean? Like, yes, of course, I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. But I picked the best man ever. And we had an amazing relationship. And guess what? My daughters didn't get to see our relationship. That he was the best father. He didn't get to raise his girls. Like, he didn't get to raise his children. So, and still it's not easy. It's not easy. So of course we should do, I fully believe that we should do, give our kids the best odds. I'm an attorney. I went, I did all that I was supposed to do, right? I was in, my first daughter, I was 5 months pregnant when I started law school. I surround myself with, I just, I just don't know what else, So even when you try to do those things, for me, I just have to relinquish and trust in God, because I'm having, I don't want to make it seem like my kids are great in general, right? But I've almost been broken. You know what I'm saying? And I just don't know what else to do. My kids had privilege. They had this, they weren't, I didn't spoil them. You know what I'm saying? They had privilege, but like education wise and things like that, like to have that holistic, the wholesome, nurturing them, having worship with them and singing with them and putting them in lessons and all that stuff, traveling and still what, and then what? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So we all are different women that have different experiences, but it's so interesting to see how we have some same struggles, similar struggles. So I don't want people to feel, I just wanted to share that, because even when you try and even when you do the right things, sometimes it's still tough. It's still tough.
That's beautiful what you said.
Mm-hmm.
And you're so right. You can do all the right things and life will life, right? Life will just show up and throw you off your course, smack you dead in the face and saying, that was not how I was planning this at all, right? And I often hear people say that, like, I provided a two-parent home for my family. I broke a curse, right? But and I'm just being real here. I've been married for, it'll be going on 12 years, but truly, what's the quality of the marriage, right? So if I'm not healed myself and I'm showing up as a broken wife and a broken mother, but I can just say, oh, we're married, is that really a flex? That type of thing. So I always look at the whole dynamic of everything, right? I look at the whole dynamic. You have people who have amazing relationships. You have people, like you said, you do all the right things and then life happens and then everything shifts, right? And you have people who are single parents who are out there getting it, like getting it really good and things like that. And then you have single parents who are not, or, you know, married parents who are not, whatever. There's so many different dynamics. But like you said, healing in every dynamic is always possible. Definitely. Julie, I think you had your hand raised.
Yeah, coming to the subject, what I'm talking about is, I don't know if you could call it a curse or not, but when I grew up with my family and stuff, me and my brother, we were so tight and everything. So my mom would take us to go see the family. You know how you used to let your kids spend summertime with your family and stuff? It was like, you know, all summers. So as I got older, my brother was home. I had graduated and I went to go see my mom's family. And my uncle took me to the bank with him, and it was okay. Then we get
We're
up
getting some feedback there. Julie, could you please stop the television or whatever you have in the background? I'm sorry, but we can't hear you right.
Can you hear me now? So anyway, me and my uncle went to the bank because he had to pay his bills, right? And they asked, "Who is this person?" He said, this is my niece, Dolores' daughter." And everywhere we were going, it was Dolores' daughter, Dolores' daughter, Dolores' daughter. And it kind of like, you know, I won't say it's a good bad, but when your family is like doing things or anything, you know, it kind of hurts you. So when you try to have your own individualized person yourself, being an individual. And that's what I was, you know, trying to be my own individual. But at the same time, you're Dolores' kid or you're Will May and James Hodges' kid, you know, like, okay, duh. And then later on, it gets back. And then just recently, I have two twin boys that are 32 and my daughter's 3. So my son said, "Mommy, somebody came in the store and asked about you. They said, we look like you." I said, "Okay." You know, it's like, wow, you know, it's, you know, it's like the same thing going around again. Like, you know what? It's like, wow. How do you manage that and, you know, to be not hurt so much? Because everywhere I go, it's, you look like your mom, you look like your mom, you look like your mom, or you look like your mother, or you look like your father. It's a good thing, but also it's a bad thing because you hear it every time. When somebody says something, they'll come back, "Well, your parents didn't raise you right," or "you are sadiddy." And that stuff kind of hurts in so many ways. But I learned to get over it and go to God when it comes to something like this, because it's like, wow, what have I done? What's coming on, you know? And I just, you know, just wanted to share that. But sometimes it does kind of get in a way, you know, you want your own individuality person, you want your personality to be yourself, not your family, if you know what I'm saying.
Right, right. I think that mindset here in my mind, what you just said, and then I'm gonna pass it to Princess. Mindset. When someone says you look like your mom, you look like your dad, you act like this and that, do you interpret that? What is the internal dialogue to say, I will be like them, right? So you hear, they actually said you look like, you heard I will end up like them in all the bad things. I can look like somebody all day. That doesn't mean that I'm going to become them. You know what I mean? And so oftentimes when things are said to us, we internalize those words and twist them, and then they end up becoming negative cognitions, which we begin to like basically fear in a sense. So basically just like really think about, okay, they said I look like, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be like, right? So that could be very helpful, Julie. Princess, I think you were next. And then I'm gonna turn it over to Miss Reddy for her the second portion of this.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Hello, is Princess, you were next.
Can you hear me?
Oh, it's another princess. Okay, go ahead. Yes.
I was gonna say that too. Like, oh, we got two princesses.
Right, I was looking at her bloodline queen. I'm like,
Original.
princess, I'm hearing a voice. Go ahead, princess. Sorry.
I always say I'm the original. No, people call me that, so I just stick with it. My name is Diane, but growing up, everybody called me princess, or I didn't like it in the beginning, but I learned to adjust to it. But I was raised with my grandmother. She's my mother. She's my mom. She's the best mom ever. And my mom was more like my sister. So we did stuff, my friends were jealous because we would go out, hang out, because she wasn't like that mom. Then she got married and then everything changed. So the hanging out stuff kind of stopped. And that became a little thing where I wasn't coming home now and then I got pregnant. So it just, but what Julie just said, because everybody always say, oh, you look, as soon as you see my mom, you are going to say it. Oh my God, you look just like your mom. And that's like, because like she said, I need to hear Diane. Nobody knows my name. They'll say Cherry's daughter. It's always Cherry's daughter. And my mom is so proud of me. Everywhere she goes, this is my daughter. That's my daughter. And I'm an only child, so and she's proud of me because I've always done things so she'll be proud. But not necessarily for her to be proud, but I'm an overachiever. And anything I'm going to do is going to be to the best of my ability. And if you don't like it, that's okay. I'm doing it because my grandmother raised me that way. And she told me, nobody's better than you. Nobody looks better than you. So I'm secure in that. But then when it comes to my mom now, I started chipping away at myself because then I want to be known for me. I don't want to hear that I'm Cherry's daughter. This is Diane, you know. But as I got older, which I would say last year or during COVID, it started happening where I talked to her and I would explain some things that's happened. I said, but if I did this, she would say, if I got a B, well, you should have gotten an A. I'm like, why? I got a good grade, so it doesn't matter. So while she would just say to me, well, I didn't know any better. And I'm trying to do things. So I said, so now we talk. And then she'll start seeing it because she went to school. So I'm listening to everybody, and we have to realize is that they were doing the best they can with what they have. Because you can't change something unless something new is inside of it. No matter how, if you have a glass and you have dirty water, it only gets clean if you pour clean water into it. And until something clean is poured in, the change is not going to happen. And what I've also noticed with generation, they hold on to that because they're afraid if they let go of it, what will they have? They hold on to that pain because then they don't know what to do after they let go of it. And you have people in marriage, like Stephanie talked about her parents. Are they happy? Are they staying together just because it's a marriage? And you don't want to, we're married, we're going to stay together. And we don't want a divorce because they don't believe in that. So they'll just stick together, but not realizing it affects the core, which is children, because you're passing that on. But then people don't want to do therapy because if you do therapy, that means you're not put together. Something is wrong with you. But right now, COVID has taught us anything. Back in the day with, mom and dad would sit and talk to each other. That was therapy. We would sit, because I'm from Jamaica, so they would come together and sit after church, come and sit in the steps, braid the kids' hair, and they're all talking to each other. That was therapy. But family is separated so much now that everybody's to themselves. So no one talks to each other anymore. So now if there's a delay there, and not everybody, I know in the church, everything is, I've been listening. And it's sad that we're going to church, but there's no healing because there's so much happening. We're saying, God this, God that, but you can't heal a thing by saying it's not there. You have to acknowledge it and address it from the top because everything rises and falls on leadership. but not everybody is in church. So how do we help those not in church now? Because that community is just there and it just keeps going. So we have to do this one at a time. And this platform is one at a time. Like with the kids, when I see them, I just talk to them as one at a time. And I share my story. So they'll hear, because I'm not afraid to share it. I tell them my story, my journey. So when they hear it, and they'll say something to me, mommy, such and I'm like, wait, I didn't think about that. So I acknowledge them because sometimes they're teaching me because I don't know. Because, I have my son, and that's like, okay, Lord, I did pretty much, I was a good girl. But then, well, he's flipping the script now to show me there's a whole nother world out there. So I'm learning how to deal with the people who have all these issues and to realize that even though I went through stuff, like Raquel, when she was talking about her mom, I understand. Your mom she's going to always feel that unless she is willing to get help. She's replaying that in her mind over and over every time she sees you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's happening. So you can't take it personally. I know you want a relationship with her, but you have to say to yourself, you know what? I have to separate myself to get me together and let God work on that. Because that's not for you to carry. It's not for you to carry. So find you and heal you. And just pray for we will be praying with you for God to heal her. Because until she let go of that, she's gonna tear herself up and miss out on the greatest part of a child that she God bless her to have a child. But not everybody can. But she was blessed to have one and carry the full term.
And
you are a
that's
blessing.
Not to cut you off, I'm sorry, but that was leading to what I was going to just share just a little bit of next, as far as breaking generational curses. That's how I'm breaking the generational curse, healing and healing. That's it right there. For my grandmother, my mother. So yeah. That's how I'm breaking the generational curse by healing. So
you don't even have to worry about breaking the curse. Heal you. Let that come after.
We have more questions. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have more questions. I want to go ahead and move this along so there's so much more that we can address, and we only have like 25 minutes and everyone's going to be ready to drop off. So let's turn it back over to Lena. Thank you, Princess, and thank you, Raquel. Lena, and
yes,
I want to turn it back over to the host. Okay.
I'm definitely here. Carol has her hand up. Carol, did you want to say anything?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. I have been sitting here and listening to everyone's story. And my story is a little bit different because even though my mom was a single mother of 8 children, she did her best with what she had. She was a loving mother, and she was a very sacrificial mother who always wanted to give the best to her children. One of the things I learned from my mother went through a breakup, a terrible breakup, but my mother always encouraged us as children to have a healthy relationship with our father. And I remember at the age of 13, my mother had told me to go spend some time with my dad, and I didn't want to go. And my mother stood me up and told me, I don't want any of my children to ever say that I put any stumbling block in their way to have a relationship with their dad. What happened between your dad and I is between your dad and I. He is a great dad. And even though their relationship ended, we saw our dad every day because he would ride by on his bicycle and made sure that he spend a few minutes with us, quality time with us. So I'm listening to the women who are saying that they don't have relationship with their mom, and it's my heart is breaking because that is not my experience. But at the same time, my mom came up in a very difficult time. She had a difficult childhood, and my mom never really told us her story, right? Because I think her story was too painful to share with her kids. But one of the things that she did was that she said, the curse is going to stop with me. So she broke that. So recently, my mom passed away probably about 17 years ago. And it was during her illness when I used to visit her in the rehab center that my mother started to share some of her story. Okay. And so I was able to take a step back and offer her grace because I said, my God, she went through that. And yet she was a good mom. And what I would like to encourage you women to do is that if you don't know your mother's story, if you still have your mom around, try and get her story from herself, not from someone else. Okay. And if she's not willing to share that story, if there's an aunt in the family that was close to your mom, maybe that aunt can share the story, because I find now that since my mother has passed, that her sister, who is in her 80s, late 80s, has been sharing with me about their story. And because my aunt is doing that, I'm able to again take a step back and offer grace. So if you still have your mom, ask God for the courage and the internal, the tenacity or whatever else that you need to approach her and sit down with her and ask for her story. Because if we don't know, we cannot break generational curse if we don't know the root of where that is coming from. Someone with cancer or whatever in the family, whatever the illness is in the family, you try to find out whether it's diabetes or whatever, you try to find out, you know, what the root cause is, and you try to fix it, whether it's eating healthier, cutting out sugar, whatever it is. And with generations, we have to know what happened, what the history is, what causes certain behavior. And if we don't know that, it's very difficult for us to break that curse. And because my mom said, you know something, I'm going to be different, she passed that on to her children. And we also have been very different with our kids. So seek whatever help that you need also. I know in the Black community, the African American community, the Caribbean community, therapy is like a no-no. It's like it's like poison, right?
Right.
Nobody wants to go to therapy. Nobody wants to address the issue. Nobody wants to talk about what is bothering them. And I feel that we need to also break that, where our children start seeing us going into counseling and seeking the help that we need to be better parents and to be better human beings. That's it.
Thank you, Miss Carol. That's who I wanted to get back to, because I had noticed her response in the chat about her and her mother's positive relationship and the grandmothers and so on and so forth, which I'm going to do a quick question dump, because I understand everything that Miss Carol is saying, and I know a lot of other women on this panel understand that as well. But here's a question that is sticking out really, really big now, since Miss Carol was able to give her experience and make her suggestions in regards to this panel and how we are supposed to be moving on. So the question that sticks out to me is, how do we get others that have loving mothers to understand our feelings are real? That's one question. We got 15 minutes, okay? So if you have a response to that question. We'll get to that, but I'm gonna drop two more, okay? And the other is, what if what you deem toxic behavior abuse is not as extreme as what other daughters may have experienced, right? That's number two. And the third one is, how do we foster healing relationships or show empathy towards our mothers when we're still hurting? Go ahead.
Okay, I want to address that first.
I'm so sorry. Can I talk speak really quickly about this, because I think this is so important. Those three questions seem like they're so related in the sense of oftentimes people, right? What people are saying about our personal stuff, right? And so when we think about people and how they assume or want to give input on a personal, intimate relationship. And what I mean by that, maybe it's a heartbroken relationship or things like that. We really have to say that our relationship and what we deem in our space with our mothers, we have to look at it, this is our relationship. And people's input on that cannot weigh so strong where it is making you have conflict within self. Because you have people that just say, you know, your mom is still alive, you should love and cherish her. Yes, I should love and cherish my mom, but if it's a toxic relationship, then there is a space where I have to set a boundary here, right? And so oftentimes we beat ourselves over the head trying to develop really, you know, trying to work so hard to fix something when maybe it's not for you to fix in that way, but it may be for you to change the dynamic and the trajectory of it going forward in your children, that type of thing. So a lot of times we have to be very careful when we are inviting people that don't have sound counsel, wise counsel into our intimate stuff, because they're only looking at it from their lenses, which is, I had a toxic relationship and we fixed it. Why don't you? Or I have a good relationship with my mom. You need to have a good relationship with your mom. Or biblically speaking, you're supposed to honor and cherish your, yeah, I do honor my mom. I do respect her, but it doesn't look like your relationship. But that doesn't mean that I'm not doing it. So I think that sometimes it's like, you know, before we invite advice into our space, we really have to look at, is that person wise to give me that kind of counsel? Yeah.
Okay, let me clarify that. I am saying that, you know, I'm not advocating that if your mom is a very toxic person and has not done the healing herself, that you are supposed to bring her into your space, because you also have to protect your heart and you have to protect your, especially if you have children and especially if you have daughters. Okay. But what I'm saying is that at what point do we, even without having that relation or having boundaries with our moms, at what point do we seek whatever help outside of family, outside of friends? Okay, seek counsel with someone who can be objective and not subjective.
Absolutely. I'm so sorry, Carol. So I didn't actually hear all of what you said. So that comment that I made was not necessarily directed to you. I'm so sorry, because I had to step away. So yeah, I was just talking in general. I didn't actually hear your whole comment that you were making beforehand. So I do apologize for that.
No. I
Yes.
didn't take your comment the wrong way. I'm just advocating that, you know, when do you get to a place where you seek healing just for yourself, even if you don't have that relationship with your mom and you don't want the relationship because nothing has changed where your mom is concerned in terms of her healing, and you don't want to bring her into the space with your children. That is your decision. But I'm saying, how do you, and I'm asking the sisters, how do you get to a place where you seek that help? Because I'm hearing a lot of pain from a lot of sisters.
That's so
A
true.
lot of pain, deep pain. And I'm saying, when do you what step do you take? And maybe some of you ladies could enlighten me on that, or
Love this. I
suggest
love
things
that
for the other
question.
ladies. What
As
Yeah.
for
step do you
myself,
take?
So I
as
absolutely
for
love that
myself,
question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Miss Reddy.
as for myself, I love my mama dearly. I promise I love her. Like, it's unreal. Because unfortunately, she was like my big sister. She was like my homegirl. Like, me and my mama had fights together. We used to roll the town together. Like, when I say fights, it was not me and her with each other. Like, we was literally battling other people with each other. You know what I'm saying? We have had gossip ceremonies, shopping experience. That was like my road dog. However, I think what a lot of us have in common is noticing the negative attributes that we didn't want to carry into our relationships and the future generations to come.
Okay.
So I noticed it like, hey, this ain't cool. We ain't supposed to be rolling like this. Because now my children is watching how me and my mom's dynamic is rolling, right? And some days it'll be good days and some days it'll be bad good days to where we could be literally cool and then having screaming matches and we both BITCHs with each other's and X, Y, and Z, right? So I noticed for me that this is not the type of relationship I want to foster with my children. I want to cut off that line to say, hey, mom, we ain't doing a good job here. Our relationship is abnormal. This is not okay. It's kind of toxic in a sense. So I need to do things different. And what made me get to that point is because my oldest child was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And there's a drug addiction that was being passed on where my mama had it, my son had it, I had it. And I'm like, hey, this is kind of becoming a pattern. So, like you said, Miss Carol, going back, and I honor everything that you stated. I had to start looking at the bigger picture. What we eating, who was diagnosed, what patterns are we passing down? And I noticed the pattern that we were passing down to each other, like it was okay and it was cool, was a lot of toxicity. So in order for us to change it, somebody has to say, "Hey guys, this ain't right. We doing this kind of wrong, right?" And I feel
Yeah.
like that's someone in my family was me. And when I
Mm.
started doing that, it started triggering other things like, "Oh, you think you better, and you think you know," and my mom like, "Oh, you think you got all the answers and X, Y, and Z." And it's like it's not that, y'all. But we have to do better because we're not building anything. We're actually destroying our family. So I went to therapy. I took my kids to therapy. We still in therapy. And I drew some lines and some boundaries. And my mom, like you said, black family, they don't want to talk about it. She's like, what you going to a therapist for? You crazy? That was insulting and hurtful for me. You know what I'm saying? Because guess what? I am crazy. Because I don't pass down some toxic traits that I learned from being in this family that I don't want to pass down to my kids. So I'm going to be crazy enough to go get some help so we can stop with my babies and their babies. But my mom doesn't see that. So I have to separate from her to save my family, not because I don't love her, not because I don't want to build with her, but where do we draw the line? It's because I do love her. And I want her generations after her to not go through what she went through and not go through what I went through. And I don't think the pain is ever going to go away because everybody want to be quote unquote normal, right? And have these beautiful families, these houses and these white picket fences, and we want to eat good and live good and be educated. That's like what we're trying to get to, right? But then some people don't see it like that. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it.
I think this is a very, very beautiful conversation. So we're ending, we're right at well, my time is 6:53, but we're about 7 minutes before we end this conversation. And I absolutely love all the input. And oh my goodness. So Steph, are we what we doing? What we gonna do? Are we gonna do another one of these, or how we gonna go forward with all of this?
We didn't put, I just want to say, as I just thank everyone for joining us tonight. And I'm very upset actually, because I guess it didn't go like I thought. Like there's panelists here. We had like 37 questions and we got to 3 of them. So like Lena said, this looks like a retreat topic. mother and daughter retreat, like literally a weekend retreat subject, and definitely an in-person type of thing. So we're going to continue this, and we're going to put a pin in it, but I want to continue to talk like for the next couple of minutes, but I want to put a pin in this discussion for a bigger, this needs to be one of our mom-daughter weekend something, because we could do this all day. Everyone talking, and there's so much we did not touch on that we have on our questions. You guys would not, you wouldn't believe how many questions we really wanted to get to here. But go ahead, Lena, if you could just go in. I want to talk to our panel members though. Raquel is here. There's some that had to jump off because, other people, got into the talking, but I want to let our panel members say something.
Well, I know one thing.
Well,
I say, Stephanie, to you all the time. SestraNow for me is literally an answered prayer. I'm so glad, man. I'm so glad, man, that I now have real, authentic women in my life.
That's it.
Y'all don't understand this. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for this. That's all I gotta say, Steph. Let God continue to use you. That's all. And I love y'all, all of y'all.
Annette, I think you had your hand. I'm sorry, girl, you didn't had your hand. Your arm probably hurting. Your virtual arm hurting. Go ahead.
No, I just, what Raquel said is just brings everything full circle. That is why that's a big reason why we founded SestraNow. And I'm so glad to see that it's going on and meeting these kind of needs. But I just wanted to share my personal story because always, right, I don't want to be speaking for anybody, and I don't want to come across as I have the answers, because obviously I don't. And just in reflecting, when I said, I did the right things, I don't know what, I didn't know what I could have done better. But I think a big thing that happens why we have problems with our mothers is because we have this like superior attitude, like we did better, and we, and most of the times we did, right? But that doesn't mean that we are better. And so we perpetuate this, we perpetuate the conflict, we further the conflict by having this superior attitude. Because obviously there are things that I missed. And Stephanie's my sister, like we've go way back. And there's plenty of times when she's reflected and she's shared with me, giving me feedback on my parenting. And Annette, if you don't check this out, if you don't fix this, then this, that, and the third, or you know what I'm saying? So a lot of times we feel that because we're not, because we're checking all these boxes, that we have it all figured out and we're better. And I think that the reality is just for me with my mother, or with my elders, I try to give them grace, because I know there's things that get lost in the sauce with me. There are things I can't see. And so, that's what I want to leave with you, that, it's not to put yourself down, but to be humble and recognize that, you might feel like, oh, I was able to protect my kids from being abused, or I was able to do this A, B, and C for my kids better than my parents did, right? That doesn't mean that we're flawless, or that doesn't mean we didn't miss stuff. And so that keeps me humble.
Yeah. I want Princess Moore for Bloodline Queens to say something, the panel members, and Angela to say something as quickly as you can, and then I'll wrap it up.
I don't know, my computer started doing something crazy for a moment. But I don't have anything else to say. However, I will thank everyone for coming out. We appreciate your presence. And this was wonderful, and that's it.
Thank you. Angela, do you want to say something before we close out?
So, with everything that everyone has, oh, wait a minute, is my thing up? Hold on a second. With everything that everyone has said, I guess it kind of gives everyone a different perspective of the different relationships that we do have, the good, the bad, the ugly. And I think, just like Stephanie said, like a retreat or something, or this is just part one of many, since you guys have so many questions, because I think the question helps to, this could be a part of our healing process as well, that we could get ideas on how to do better, how we can forgive, how we can overcome, you know, all these things so that we can be better parents. Because like Annette also said, we do the best we can, but like we may have missed something because we're so busy competing with our mothers, is a word to use. And as we go forth, this is like a therapeutic session thingy to keep bringing out other ideas for other people.
Thank you, Angela. So if it's okay with everyone, we're at 8 o'clock. Lean, I want to just take a moment to thank our co-hosts. I'll speak for the SestraHood Alliance leaders. Lena Chapman, thank you for your time this evening. You're an amazing host. And Kenyana Reddy, thank you so much for your time. You were an amazing host. I want to thank everyone on behalf of SestraHood Alliance for joining us this evening. And because we're at 8 o'clock, we're going to wrap this up. This is recorded and it will be on the YouTube channel for those that want to come back and take a look at it. But I want to wrap up by saying it's just not a coincidence that just within the last 2 days that I started speaking to my mother again. And it's someone said in the chat, it's grace, right? Let's end it there with extending that grace in kindness to our parents, because we don't know what they went through. And no matter how onerous they may be, mean and evil, whatever it is, sometimes, you know, as Christians, those that are Christians, to whom much is given, much is required. That's what God spoke to me, that made me say, you have to step up. My sibling, my brother was like, he didn't understand, my younger brother, why don't you just be the bigger person? Our mom is not well. You know what I mean? You just can't he said, you just can't let it go. And I had to force myself to let it go, no matter how much it hurt. So let's continue this discussion. And I thank everyone for their time this evening, and we will continue this. Stay tuned. For those of you that want to follow SestraNow, please join our app for women at www.sestranow.com. You can download it there or on the Apple Store or the Google Play Store. You can also follow us on Facebook or all social media. Just Google SestraNow.com and you will find us. I want to say good night and thank everyone for joining us. This has been an amazing event, and stay tuned for part 2, which most likely will be in person. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I love you all, Sestras. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.